Moving on, where did journalism begin in America and how has it evolved? Well, one of the major threads that we're going to trace in this discussion is of how this notion of objectivity in the way that information is presented has not been a part of different areas of news at different times. But unequivocally, the colonial era, so up until the Revolution in 1776, and even the early American press when it was the United States of America following the Revolutionary War, didn't operate with objectivity as the ideal of how the news is supposed to be presented. Instead, journalism was basically an extension of political parties and was sort of a persuasive or a dirty way to say that is a propaganda tool. And so this was a function of where the money came from. It was sort of a conversation among the elite and the affluent, and really just sort of these were the organs of political parties and those who already sort of had power and wanted to speak to other people in power. So we're going to look at how this evolves and how the target audience and other aspects of the way news is written evolve. But just as a sort of a little illustration there too, that one of the staples of objectivity, interviewing people or getting quotations from key players in whatever the particular story is, didn't happen in these papers. Nor did they even see fit necessarily to cover what the other side was doing, right? So famously at the Constitutional Convention, when the Constitution was being debated and ratified, there were these two camps, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, of competing philosophies for how the Constitution should be drawn up at the time. And the newspapers that were supported by the Federalists didn't even account for what the Anti-Federalist people said in their speeches at the convention. They just reported the side of the Federalists. This all started to change in the 1830s when news sort of started becoming commercialized in a different way. The business model changed. So this slide is setting you up to make the connection yourself. If mostly the affluent or rich people read newspapers, who does that leave to maybe start to sell newspapers to? Everybody else, right? So this smart guy, Benjamin Day, with his paper, The New York Sun, basically inaugurated the era of mass-produced news. And he dropped the price of the newspapers to a penny, which was affordable for the vast majority of working people. And he began to sell advertising space in the newspaper. And this, along with classified ads and sales of the actual newspapers on the street, became the source of revenue for newspapers, and other papers adopted this. So it shifted away from being kind of just this propaganda extension of political parties and other elites, and toward being a mass-produced product that made money on advertising, selling advertising space, classified ads, and street sales. The kind of stuff that went along with this in the newspaper was stuff that would sort of interest everybody potentially, right? So it kind of shifted the type of content that was emphasized. You had these sort of sensationalistic kind of things, this kind of infamous thing of the inhabitants of the moon, which people, I think at the time, even then, probably sort of realized was maybe not real, but it was kind of fun, and so this sort of stuff is very different than, like a thorough account of, the Federalist position on how the Constitution should be structured, for instance, like, you might have even gotten in the previous era, right? So we have a connection between the business model. We're selling to the masses. We have to produce content that the masses are going to be interested in. And the term that gets used for this sometimes is lowest common denominator. This is a little derogatory, but the idea is that